think we can start now, and there's that join us probably through the course of the meeting, but apparently there's no one in the waiting room right now, so we will commence the meeting and welcome them in. And I do welcome you for coming to this meeting. Thank you for coming to the Phase 2 community outreach meetings for the proposed multifamily residential development at 555 Beechwood Drive. My name is Richard Zelenka. I'm an urban planning consultant, and I will be your host for this evening's presentation and public input session. So unlike previous sessions that you may have been involved in, this session is provided by Southside Group. Southside Group is the developer who will be building the multifamily development on these lands. These are lands that have been declared surplus by the region of Waterloo, lands that are intended to be used to support the housing objectives of the region and of the city of Waterloo. And these lands will be developed in accordance with the official plan and zoning that are in place under the city official plan and the city's zoning bylaw applying to the property right now. So if I could have the next slide, Tim. There we go. So this meeting has as its purpose, after the introductions, to present the developer's preliminary design proposal for the development at 555 Beechwood, and to explain some of the reasoning that has gone into the architect's designs of these lands. And then after the presentation, then we will provide an opportunity for anyone that's joining us to comment on the designs or to ask questions about what has been presented. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that the Beechwood community itself, and including the subject lands, are lands traditionally used by the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and neutral people. And we do acknowledge the continuing presence and tradition and philosophies of the indigenous peoples with whom we share these lands today. So we'll do a few introductions now. And first off, I'd like to introduce Jim Erb. Jim is a Waterloo councillor, and then I'm going to ask Jim to say a few words, and when he's finished, to introduce Sandra Hanmer, who is your ward councillor for the city of Waterloo. So Jim, if you can unmute yourself, and please go ahead.
Thanks, Richard. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this open house. I recognize it's a busy time of the day for young families with little ones being hungry and maybe wanting to play outside. So thank you for joining this evening, and thanks also to for the Southside Group for hosting this evening. 555 Beechwood is a pilot project of the region's new strategy to use some of our surplus lands to create more affordable housing in the Waterloo region. You may remember late in June, when this project was first brought to the attention of the city and the neighborhood, there was a commitment for an opportunity for more public feedback on the design. And the meeting we held this afternoon with some residents, and the one this evening is designed to do that. we're excited that this project is helping to meet the housing objectives of both the city and the region by adding a range of housing mix, which is identified in both official plans of the city and the region. I'd like to, again, personally thank Southside for hosting this, who have been working with both the city and the region over the past number of months to come up with a design that incorporates the feedback that we've already received from the neighborhood, and looking forward to receiving that same kind of input this evening. The meeting is being hosted by Southside, who are the developers. And so now any changes or modifications that you might suggest will be in their hands and into incorporated. So thank you for joining us. And before we begin the formal part, I would like to invite Sandra Hamner, who is the Ward Councillor for Ward 1 for the City of Waterloo, where 555 Beechwood Road is located, to say a few words as well. Sandra.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Jim. I too would like to echo appreciation for everyone taking time out of busy days and over the dinner hour potentially to join us tonight. It's been something that's very important to make sure that we have opportunities for input and discussion. As Councillor Urbis said, this project is a project of the region. However, because it's located in the city of Waterloo and within Ward 1, it's important that we have the opportunity to provide the feedback on the housing design that's being put forward by the development team. And I really appreciate Southside and the work specifically of Richard, Tim, and Greg for being here tonight and willing to host and listen to the comments that are coming from the residents of Ward 1, which are things that we want to be able to pay attention to as we can. And I look forward to the open discussion. We had a great discussion this afternoon, and I fully expect similar kinds of comments tonight. So thank you again for everyone for coming, and for the group that's put this presentation together. With that, I'll turn it to Tim, and you can take us forward through the design work that you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. So just before we go to Tim, I do want to identify members of the Southside development team that are here tonight. And I've already introduced myself as a consultant to Southside, and our firm does a lot of consulting work in the field for Southside. Tim is the project architect, and we'll be providing the main part of the presentation tonight to you. Tim from Nicholson Sheffield Architects, and Greg Playford is here as well. And Greg with Devonshire Financial has been a consultant on this project from its outset. Will also be available to for questions that may come up later. So I'd like to start by just going over some of the basic project information for the design that you're about to see at 555. That's going to be the name of the development for this area. I think it's important to recognize that this is primarily a market-driven housing development. It is something that is going to be 60% geared to the normal market rents in the community. So from that standpoint, it is a normal type of development that we would be reviewing with the city as part of a site plan approval. However, in this particular case, because of the involvement of the region in providing the land for the project, there is the opportunity through this pilot program to provide 40% of the units within this development at a moderate. So we refer to those as affordable units. They will be provided at 80% of the CMHC's median market rate as that rate exists at the time of completion of the project. The project has two major elements to it, and those two major elements respond to the two very different frontages that the property has. And Tim's going to be describing those, but I will just say there is the apartment building, which is intended to house 114 apartment units, 83 one-bedroom and 31 two-bedroom units, but also a group of townhouses, 12 townhouse units. Within the development, 21% of units are intended to be barrier-free because accessibility is an important element of this development. And as I was mentioning before, 40% of the units, and they will likely be the 40% within the apartment building, will be rented at that 80% mark of the CMHC median market rate. The apartment building, 6 stories high. Tim will describe some of the variations in that height, where it drops down at the ends of the building. And the townhouses will be 3-story townhouse units fronting onto Beechwood. I'm going to ask Tim to start his presentation now of and only say that what the design team has attempted to do was to respond to not only the site itself and the policy directions that the region and the city have identified, also to attempt to respond to some of the comments that were received in earlier meetings that have been provided to us by the regional staff and by the city staff as well. So in a design, the architects have attempted to those issues that members of the public, which may include yourselves, have provided in the earlier sessions. So Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you right now, and we'll go through that presentation.
Thank you, Richard. Again, my name is Tim Wickens, and I'm an architect with Nichols and Sheffield. We were excited to be invited to participate in this project with the Southside team. We're just going to walk through a brief presentation of the preliminary design proposal, starting with a quick review of the context. And then we certainly look forward to receiving more comments and questions from people who are interested. Some of you may be quite familiar with the context, but for those of you who aren't, I think it's important to note that aside from the fact that the site is characterized by the sloping topography, which slopes down from Herb Street to Beechwood Drive, it's significantly characterized by the fact that it fronts on 2 streets. If we look at the character of those 2 streets, they're quite different. So Herb Street is a regional road, and if we zoom into the photograph, those of you who are familiar with it will recognize the fact that it's a street with a higher speed limit, higher traffic volumes, higher traffic noise, but it also doesn't have very many buildings that address the street directly, with most of the properties either side lotting or rear lotting onto the street. So the street is generally framed by these sound barriers, fences, and privacy planting. And then if we look at Beechwood, especially right at the site, but even in the plan, you can see that this is a more traditional form of urbanism that is certainly more pedestrian friendly, and it's a street with a lower speed limit, and certainly lower traffic volumes with not a lot of through traffic that you would get on Herb Street. And it also is predominantly characterized by buildings that address themselves directly to the street of a certain residential scale and rhythm. And that's important to our considerations of how we would design to respond to that. So we did look at, and these are a handful of the sketches that we do in addition to building models and rendering things in the computer. We often start off with a very quick set of studies that explores different ways to take the allowable density and massing and height for a particular lot and figure out how to locate it on the property so that not only the property functions to the needs of the particular program, in this case, multi-unit residential housing, but that it also creates or contributes to a positive urban environment. So the consistent thing that that all of these attempt to do is locate the massing in a way that contributes to that positive urban environment, and predominantly locating a larger building on Herb Street that, as you can see in this little rendering here, transitions down to a smaller building on Beechwood. And as we worked our way through these things, we have to test them to a greater degree of specificity in the computer. And so we actually input this information in hard lines. And initially we found that we could achieve the desirable outcome in terms of providing affordable housing and residential suites in a single building on Herb Street. We figured out a location for the driveway that seemed to make sense from a traffic safety perspective, being located pretty much midway between the two bends in Beechwood Drive. But what we found, especially after consulting with the region and city and reviewing in more detail the urban design guidelines for Waterloo and the Beechwood community design guidelines, and also reviewing with the region the comments that they received from the community, that we were going to have some issues with the exposure of the parking to a friendly established residential community that is currently found on along Beechwood Drive, and we decided to revisit the scheme. So if we go to the next slide, you see what's been done is that the mass of the building on Herb Street was reduced, and the parking that was initially surface parking was tucked under the building in a subgrade parking structure. So essentially about a third of the parking that was initially proposed for the surface is now under the building, and that gave us room to create these townhouse buildings that are essentially providing another form of housing of a different scale and type, and a transition from the Beechwood community of single-family homes and low-rise multi-unit residential development up to Herb Street and the larger building that we've located there. We've also located as an amenity for the development and for the community a mid-block connection for pedestrians that would lead to Herb Street, quite close to the bus stop that happens over here at Erbsfield Court, and it complements the existing through block connection that's over here on the Cedars property. There's also a proposal for a partial connection through the townhouses that not only breaks up the mass of those townhouses and makes them more similar in scale and texture to the existing development, but also provides an address for the building, so it participates in the Beechwood community. And here we have a view of the west end of the development at that mid-block pedestrian connection. And this is a preliminary design proposal, so the details haven't all been worked out, and part of that is why we're here tonight, is to get some feedback on some of these details and ideas that we're presenting. But the intent expressed here is that we would be providing a landscaped and formalized walkway, so that it would be traversable, the site would be traversable, and the two streets would be connected year round, and that it would include site lighting, so that it would be safe day or night for anybody who might be taking transit and coming back into the community in the evening. This image also describes to some degree the role of the townhouses in mediating the lower rise community on Beechwood with the building that's proposed for Herb Street. So a view directly down Beechwood to the east, with the existing homes on the left side of the screen, and then the proposed townhomes on the right side of the screen. And again, as a preliminary design proposal, we are working out some of the details, but certainly the idea is to take inspiration from the forms, the architectural forms of the existing homes, and the scale and rhythm of those homes as they present themselves down the street, and create a very, very specific experience for a pedestrian, and utilize those to create these townhomes. And some of the features that I think are important to these are the idea of the recessed porches that manage that transition from the public space of the street to the private space of the homes, the gable roof forms of varying scales or sizes, and the use of high quality building materials that would be found in any established residential community, and certainly in this one, like the brick masonry that's proposed for the base of the buildings, with contrasting brick masonry for some of the details, and in this case, we're proposing like a wood patterned siding for accent materials. And again, you see that the townhouses are providing that screening for the surface parking that exists between the townhouses and the building on Herb. And then this is a view looking the other way towards the west from the driveway entrance to the site. It is notable that the distance provided between the driveway and the bend in Herb at the west end, where it bends to the north, provides a long sight line, and it's intended to provide as safe a traffic condition as possible. And this is a cross section taken through the site, and on the left side we can see the existing homes on Beechwood with Beechwood Drive, and then the proposed townhomes, which again, the intent is that the scale and the rhythm and texture that creates on the street for a pedestrian is complementary to those existing homes, and that it provides a screening function for the surface parking that would exist between the townhomes and the building on Herb. And also it creates a visual transition from Beechwood, where the building on Herb, the apartment building on Herb, is seen as a background and in the same view line as the townhomes themselves. And then the building on Herb is designed to be in scale with the street itself and to frame that street and address itself to the street. If we go to the site plan, again, the intent there was that this building was reduced in scale from the original proposal after we reviewed comments from the community and from the region and the city urban design department and planning department to make room for those townhouses and create an address on Herb Street, where typically at this time the existing buildings on Herb are facing the opposite direction or are side lotted or back lotted, creating a kind of a closed corridor for Herb Street. And the intent is that the proposed building would address Herb and provide some of the overlook and sense of inhabitation on the street that's important for a safe pedestrian environment and certainly a safe route to get to public transit at the west end of the site. So this is a view from Herb looking at the building, the apartment building, and we're looking towards the northwest, mostly west. And again, still working through some of the details on the building, but we've landed on a strategy where the building is broken up with vertical reveals in it to break down the massing of the building and provide a visual interest there at the ends of the building at the east and west. As Richard mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the building steps down and steps back at the 5th floor to create another vertical transition for the building to the adjacent properties. And it also provides a large outdoor amenity space at the top of the building that would be facing east. And that would be an amenity space for the residents of the building. This view also describes at the smaller scale that at grade, there would be walkouts from individual units. And at the larger scale, the building creates that address on Herb Street. So it has a direct connection to the public sidewalk, and through the use of landscaping and garden walls, canopies, and this large vertical reveal in the building facade, and then an urban scale canopy, it creates a clear address on Herb Street and a relationship to that public realm. And then finally, this is an image from Beechwood looking towards the building on Herb. And I mentioned this earlier, the separation in the 2 sets of 6 townhouses that is a landscaped pathway that's meant to certainly break up the mass of the townhouses into something that's more akin to the scale of buildings that exist in the community already. But it's also meant to create an appropriately scaled address for the building and a way for that building to relate itself to, and for the residents to participate in the community and the culture of Beechwood. And as the through block connection was described, it's meant to be lit and and a safe place for people to navigate back and forth between the community and that building. And with that, I'll send it back to Richard to, I guess, open things up for comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So the developer's design team has attempted to meet both the need to fulfill the housing objectives of the region and the city, and has to address some of the comments and issues already raised from community members, also from the city and the region. And you've seen from Tim's presentation the inclusion of townhousing to provide transition and the screening of the parking areas and screening of the apartment building, the view of the apartment building. You've seen that the attempt to address both streets in different ways because they are different streets, Herb and Beechwood. Tim has described some of the high quality of design and construction materials that are intended to be used in this development. So overall, we believe this is a very exciting and desirable type of design, and one that would be fitting for its place within the community between Herb and Beechwood. But because this is the preliminary design, and we have committed to speaking to the community at this stage, we want to know from you what things you like and what things you would like to be different on this. Before a plan is finalized for submission to the city as part of the site plan approval process. So we'd like to know from you, what do you think about the arrangement of the buildings on the site, the location of the parking, the use of private garage, Beechwood, the location of the walkway, the use of materials that is being proposed, the styles of the buildings, all of that. We would like to hear from the community. We got a lot of well considered comments at this afternoon, and we're hoping to have the same this evening from those of you who are attending tonight. So we're going to open this up both for questions and comments. We will attempt to respond to any questions that you do have, and we will definitely be down any of the comments that you make for consideration, along with those that we received from this afternoon's meeting in the discerning the form of the submission to the city. And I should say as well, the submission to the city itself will be subject to further consideration, further examination by city staff to ensure that all the city's guidelines are being met properly, and there may be certain additional changes. We've already had input from both the city and the region to help the design at this stage. So we're looking forward to your comments to help us get to the next stage of the process.